Bendy and the Ink Machine is a very interesting game. On the face of it, it is a fantastic concept. In the first chapter, I love it. It's very creepy. It makes you know nothing's gonna happen, but still, it scares the ever-loving bejesus out of you if you have any like sense of what the tropes that you have been presented at the very start of the game, just with that one letter. Beautifully done. As the chapters progress, however, it's pretty clear that certain story elements got pitched into the mix later on in the idea and during the development, and the style of gameplay changes dramatically from chapter to chapter. So there's very little of that investigative, like discovering what happened to the studio element that people really liked about the first two chapters of the game in the later chapters. And then the final fight, at the time, I was excited about it, and I was like, oh, well, surely this makes sense. Surely it makes sense. But as time went on, I realized, well, that ending fight doesn't make any sense at all. That's not who Henry should be fighting. Henry, I don't know if it's safe to talk about spoilers for this game. I'll follow your lead on that, Cody.
Sure, you can spoil whatever you want.
Okay, well, the ending of Bendy and the Ink Machine, you end up fighting a big beastly monster version of Bendy. And it kind of cinches the deal on saying no to what everybody thought was going to happen, which was that Bendy himself was going to be at least somewhat sentient and be out for personal revenge, but also kind of love because, Henry, his father figure, aside from Joey, abandoned him. So that's, you can be very sympathetic towards the archetype that Bendy fulfills in that relationship. It's like the abandoned son who's grown up without a positive father figure influence. Everybody loves that shit. Everybody knows how that shit goes too, because on some level, we've all experienced a degree of it. So for Bendy to then just be relegated to the mindless beast at the end of the game, instead of Henry actually having a proper confrontation with Joey, and for Joey to be the big bad that you have to defeat, it felt like it didn't quite deliver. And on top of that, you don't have a whole lot of information about Henry given to you during the game. You get just enough to be like, okay, well, Henry conceived Bendy, great. Henry helped co-found the studio, great. That's all fantastic information. But we don't know much about his personality or even how he feels about his creation. And that gap is what I kind of was exploring with the, first off, the AU stuff I was playing with on my Tumblr page, but also with Welcome Home.
Do you remember in episode 2, near the end, where you turn everything on and you're on your way out, and then you get clanged on the back of the head with a shovel or something, and then you look up? This was the scariest moment for me, because when Sammy was looking down at you with the Bendy mask on, I thought that was Bendy speaking. I was like, oh my God, he talks and he's like alive and everything. Then it just turned out to be some guy. So whatever. If Bendy spoke,
I can.
Yeah. Freaky.
I can do you one better, because the trailer for chapter 2, when that came out and we heard a little sample of Sammy's voice, everybody thought that was Bendy talking too. But yeah, you were saying about the way that chapter ended.
Yeah. And, here's my Bendy hot take. The original design of the Ink Demon, the one where he was like this tube with a smile, I found that scarier than when he had like claws and was all spindly, because he looked too much like they were trying to make him scary. And it didn't work on me. I
agree. The attractiveness of Bendy as a story is in the fact that it sits in that uncanny valley. The idea of those cardboard cutouts appearing and disappearing, that was way more terrifying than the Ink Demon itself.
If those like South Park waddled after you, that would have been so scary.
What I would have loved is for one of them to like spawn a voice line of a little cartoon voice somewhere behind you. It's like, hiya, Henry, something like that. And then no follow-up immediately. But like later on, you start hearing little disembodied voices of what's clearly the Bendy voice actor saying things that could plausibly be from a cartoon, but are way too accurate for the situation. That would have done fantastically. Yeah, I would have really loved to see the cartoon aspect of that game played up more. That's pretty much what I was doing with Welcome Home.
And going by some of your recent streams, you were working on a sequel to Welcome Home?
Yes.
Is that right?
A direct sequel, actually. It takes place starting almost immediately after the first video ends. And those streams are still up. I think they're still up, but I don't know if I have them listed on my channel. If they're not still up, sorry, you missed it. But the idea of the next video, it's going to be called Behind the Curtain. And it's kind of following through on the story, the version of the story as it's laid out in Welcome Home. I don't want to give too many spoilers, but what's basically going to happen in it is that Henry is going to encounter Alice Angel. And this version of Alice is not going to be the sadistic, I must be perfect kind of character archetype that you find in the game. She's going to be a much calmer, judge-like character who's going to be like, yeah, you left us. What are you going to do about it, Henry? And that's going to be kind of the attitude that she takes towards Henry in that video. It's also going to be an extremely involved video. Far more characters will appear in it than in the first one. I think we've got the list up to 9. And special 3D models, updated versions of 3D models are all being produced for those characters right now, and they look absolutely fantastic. Like the first video, it will be mostly 3D with a couple of 2D sections that I'll be animating myself.
Nice. In one of these streams, I was able to snatch a quote, and I find it very interesting, and I'll say it right now. Okay, you said this. I said this in another stream, that I don't consider myself much of a storyteller, but the reason I'm really coming back to this, Behind the Curtain, after so long, it's not because people were demanding it. It's not, even though they definitely were. I couldn't get the story out of my head, this particular version of the story that I really want to tell with these videos. And I think, you know what? If it's not going to leave me alone, I should frickin' do it. And I think that perfectly encapsulates the curse, for lack of a better word, of creative artistic people. It's not like you're doing this just because it might be a fun thing. You can't stop thinking about it, and you just have to do it.
Yep. Oh, that is exactly it. Because if I'm completely honest, the story that I would like to tell in these videos would require a third. I have no idea if I'm still going to be passionate about the story enough to tell the third after the second is done. So like no promises on that. But I already have an idea of how it would go. And I'm thinking like, you know what? That's the curse right there. It's going to happen, but I don't know it's going to happen. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So I've been resting on this, not even a question, but just something that I want to say about Welcome Home and this new one coming on. I think that if you do Behind the Curtain, maybe the next one, and if you work hard, keep your head down, I think that you will be able to create a new accepted and appreciated canon of Bendy and the Ink Machine. Like how there's Star Wars canon and Star Wars legends, I think you'll be able to create Bendy legends. Do you think?
Bendy legends. Yeah. In a manner of speaking, I don't disagree. That being said, it's far from official. It is not endorsed by the Bendy creators in any stretch or any way, shape, or form. Although I hear they did like Welcome Home. My attitude towards it is like, look, if they tell me to stop, I'll stop. Because they kind of are fully within their rights. But the reason I'm making them is this isn't just the idea that I had for how the story could go. It's if you look across the fandom, so to speak, from the game's inception, like when the first chapter was released to when it ended, and even a couple of years afterwards, you'll notice certain themes cropping up over and over again. And those themes are that Bendy is an abandoned son character. He's kind of innocent, even though he's absolutely not, that's not the character that's in the game. The character that's in the game is a beast that is sometimes sadistic and sometimes beastly, and there's no consistency. Fan and Bendy is almost unilaterally, I can't say this word, unilaterally either a sweet, cream puff of a child who can do no wrong, or a little brat who just wants to cause mischief, and he's upset that he was robbed of his show and of his main creator back in the day, and he kind of wants to take a little bit of revenge. Henry, for his part, is almost universally portrayed as a father figure character who like harbors some deep regret at leaving the studio, even though he thought that was the right thing to do at the time. But now he realizes, oh, yeah, I did kind of abandon this creation of mine. There's that kind of deadbeat dad guilt in a way. And something else that's interesting that I noticed happen was all of the fans universally agreed that Henry had left for the war effort. There's no hints of that in the game. I have no idea what the book adaptation did with it either, but that's a curious thing. It's almost as though people realize that that character archetype, if he was truly a passionate creator, there's no way he would have willingly given up his creation. Either he had a fight with Joey, or he had to, like, he was pulled away from the studio in some fashion, maybe both. And what I was hinting at with the version of the story that I was telling was kind of a combination of those. Like, yeah, okay, so say he got drafted, and he told Joey or something, and Joey freaked the hell out at him. Is like, if you walk out that door, Henry, you're never coming back, kind of thing. And so Henry storms out the door, and doesn't come back. And those are things that happened in everybody's interpretations of the story, even before the story was fully told in the game. It's like, there's something there that needed to happen that is the generally, I don't want to say correct, because that sounds kind of harsh, but for lack of a better term, correct progression of that type of story. And so everybody's like missing it. I'm like, I can tell it, and I know what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, I think that's going to happen. I think you're going to get a little cult, a big cult following of this is
I don't want a cult. I don't want a cult.
No, too bad.
The game's about how cults are bad.